Hello again everyone and welcome back to Let's Win Remote Viewing Tournament. Today we're talking about pictograms. First let's talk about the ideogram, a cornerstone of the coordinate remote viewing method developed by Ingo Swann, more recently called the controlled remote viewing method. This document from the Stargate archives at the CIA talks about controlled remote viewing and its development. In section 7 we have a discussion of the ideogram and its discovery. Basic understandings of the ideogram, it says, are found not only in our own work, but in several other fields that have concentrated upon the microgenic basis of perception and semantics and meaning. Woo! The ideogram is not unique to work in CRV. A historical search of parapsychology, psychical research, semantics, clinical neurology, and artistic disciplines adequately support the premise that the ideogram is the result of a basic, unconscious human perceptual modulation. Whew! The presence of the ideogram is recorded as early as 1882, but its significance was not grasped. Here we have examples of telepathic impressions in René Warcarlier's work compared to the drawing of a patient suffering from visual agnosia and how similar these look. And here we have a section from Rudolf Arnheim's Art and Visual Perception showing a child's drawing. The point being that it's similar to what psychic drawings look like. Finally, here are some pictures from Upton Sinclair's book, Mental Radio, by his wife Mary Craig Sinclair, who psychically duplicated drawings, simple sketches. There's a column showing the target doodle and the response showing ideogrammatic perceptual formations, according to the author of this document, which I suspect was Ingo Swann. Finally, here's a sketch of a horse, and here's a very distorted psychic impression drawn. You have elements of a head, a leg, a back, a neck, but they're very rudimentary, almost like a child's drawing with exaggerated features. There's a lot of controversy about ideograms as taught by Ingo Swann in his CRV methodology, with his earliest students maintaining that ideograms are only meant to be interpreted by their motion and feeling and the initial analytic response to the motion and feeling, and the visual information of a squiggle on a paper is just an epiphenomenon. Well, this is the stance taken by Paul H. Smith, here described in Ideograms, funny little squiggles that cause all the fuss. I'd rather say Ideograms, funny little squiggles that ruin friendships and destroy Facebook groups. And here we have CRV, the ideogram controversy. What controversy? Asks Daz Smith. Here he argues that sometimes it's useful to look at the visual information in ideogram and not just rely on the motion and feeling. Before you become embroiled in this controversy by listening to my heretical words, I'd like to bring your attention to Ingo Swann's Everybody's Guide to Natural ESP. This is a fantastic book that describes some of the early research in psychic replication of doodles, such as what we saw in the Stargate document. Ingo Swann talks about a psychic pictolanguage having an element in common with all picture drawers. It translates incoming psychic information to basic forms and shapes which are then recognized by the individual's psychic system and consciousness. The picture drawing mechanism seldom goes beyond this specific task, and it is unusual to find picture drawings fleshed out into highly artistic renderings. When the drawing is fleshed out, we are most likely to discover it has been done so by consciousness trying to fill in the holes, and that what has been filled in is erroneous. Ingo Swann, in talking about a psychic pictolanguage, draws upon the same inspiration as the Stargate document, Rudolf Arnheim's well-known book, Art and Visual Perception. He mentions, it is important to note that psychic picture drawings are unique only in their psychic aspect, otherwise they have close relatives in the drawings of children, in doodles, and in the structural sketches of artists, architects, and inventors. Because Ingo Swann drew upon the same inspiration in his interpretation and understanding of the ideogram as he did in his discussion of a psychic pictolanguage in Everybody's Guide to Natural ESP, I'm going to be ultra heretical and say that really the distinction between ideogram and pictogram is minute. We can look in a moment at the definition from Wikipedia, but most of the examples in this early CRV document from Stargate emphasize pictorial relationships between the psychic drawings and the target. They do not emphasize the motion and feeling at all because they're dealing with 2D images. This supports, in my opinion, Daz Smith's understanding that the visual data of ideogram can sometimes be useful. But for the sake of keeping the peace, let's call those pictograms instead of ideograms. The CRV method can maintain its position that the ideogram visual data should not be interpreted, but people could choose to use pictograms in which the visual data is interpreted, or on occasion only the visual data can be interpreted, such as in this case of a horse in the Stargate archive document. It would be great for associative remote viewing. Here's an example from Wikipedia's entry of the ideogram. It shows a no dogs allowed sign in Spain. It says the dog's illustration is a pictogram because it directly represents a physical object. The red circle and bar is an ideogram representing the idea of no or not allowed. In this case, we need both the ideogram and the pictogram to develop the full meaning. Take a look at the experience of creating an ideogram. For example, if I started a remote viewing session and I drew an ideogram and it looked like this, that could mean anything at all. I'm not going to look at it and always interpret and say, well, that looks like a wave, so it has to be water. No, instead, what was the motion and the feeling that I experienced when making the ideogram? And I may have experienced or received a spontaneous impression of vibration and hard. And so I may have an immediate analytic response that this is a man-made object. There is another way of doing things. There's another way of doing things that isn't expressly explained in Ingo Swann's controlled remote viewing method, and that is a prelingual visual psychic impression. These are similar to the kinds of drawings that children might make with exaggerated heads and bodies, like a person looking like this. We all recognize this as a man. It actually represents a real physical thing and not an idea. And that is more like a pictogram. There's nothing wrong with using a pictogram, and I see many of you do. Sometimes I can match something with a pictogram that directly applies to the photo. So today we're going to try a pictogram method for a remote viewing tournament.
No, try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
When performing this session, I like to do two things. I like to do a pictogram for the winning target photo and a pictogram for the losing target photo. This gives me more ways to match to do my judging. If you're interested in this method and the reasoning behind it, I can deliver a much longer presentation. So starting off, my pictogram for winning. I had a sort of zigzaggy feeling when drawing, and I didn't see anything. I'm letting my finger trace on the screen the way that it feels it should go, and I had a strong impression like that. I don't know really what it is, and this is creating for me analytic overlay of thoughts associated with traveling or staircase or escalator, things that are hard but also in motion, and maybe luggage for some reason. Moving on, I want to go to the next sub-target, as I call them, and try to draw the losing photo. Ready? This time I drew something, and it reminds me a bit of a brush, with there being softer feelings where I've just drawn that arrow, and kind of a longer section there, maybe narrower too, in this space. I have a sense that it's more of an object, and I hesitate to say natural. Right now, I also have AOL of a flower. I'm stopping the session, and we can go on to judging. Well, would you look at that, huh? At this stage, I tell myself that the order that I see the pictures in doesn't matter. What matters to me is which one is going to win and which is going to lose. I've actually surprised myself. You may not hear it in my voice, but oh my gosh, there's an actual freaking staircase here, and it's kind of zigzagging. And then over here we have something, an object that's softer at top. So, based on the order that I drew my impressions, my pictograms, I would go with the bottom image as being the winning photo, and I would go with the top image as being the losing photo. And the way that I dial that in is to bring my confidence towards the winning image. I feel like this is honestly a very good hit. I'm going to put my confidence all the way at 10, and we'll see what happens. The next day. It's the staircase. Hooray! Thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed Pictograms.